So without further ado, I wanted to introduce Sue Taylor and Suzanne Hassell, tonight's presenters. Ikebana, if you guys are not familiar, is the Japanese word for the art of Japanese flower arranging. A free translation might be bringing flowers to life. Ikebana arrangements capture nature through the designer's eyes and provide uniquely beautiful glimpses of something magical. It is an art form that would challenge your creativity, and I would consider my creativity challenged. So I would like to welcome Sue and Suzanne up to the podium to talk to us about Ikebana.
I think you're
Give you guys the mic.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Sue Taylor.
I'm Suzanne Hassell.
You guys take it away.
So, and just go advance one slide. Okay, the arts of Japan are many and varied. Many of them are in danger of dying out as masters reach their declining years. Many programs are started with an eye to preserving these artisanal skills, some of which take years to learn. Masters are teaching young people these traditional skills of Japan. Such skills as garden, can you hear me okay? Garden design, sword forging, unko carving, intricate basket weaving, architecture with bamboo, pottery, textile dyeing for kimono, obi, and scrolls, and of course, Ikebana. Ikebana, as one small boy pronounced at one of our exhibitions, originated in the 6th century. First school, Ikenobo, continues to this day and is the foundation from which later schools are sprung. The system of Iemoto or headmaster came about in the 18th century. In our chapter, we have teachers in Ohara, Sogetsu, Ichio, and Bami Shofu schools. There are many, many schools of Ikebana and hundreds of chapters around the world. Bunshin Ohara founded the Ohara School in 1895 and presented his Moribana style 2 years later. This style has been developed by all Ohara headmasters, including the present-day 5th headmaster, Hiroki Ohara. Sogetsu School was founded by Sofu Teshigahara in 1927. The current headmaster is Akane Teshigahara, Sofu's granddaughter. The credo of the school is that Sogetsu can be done by anyone, anywhere, anytime, with any kind of material. Ichio School was founded in 1937 by siblings Maikoff Kasuya and his sister Ichio. This is one of the premier schools in Japan. Bami Shofu, our youngest school, was begun by Bessie Fuchs in Hawaii and features driftwood in each arrangement. Its second headmaster, Rick Carrasco, is a member of our chapter and is Bessie's daughter, as is Bessie's daughter, Laurel. Each school has its own rules and lessons and allows freestyle arrangements after the lessons are learned. These are the tools of the trade. The scissors are called hasami. The needlepoint holders are called kenzans. This little tool is called a pin straightener for bent pins.
There you go. So we're each going to spend a little bit of time talking about why we do Ikebana and kind of our take on it and why we find it interesting. And I do want to say that our opinions are those of ourselves and not necessarily Ikebana International or our particular school. So I'm in the Ichio school and Susan O'Hara school. So I just wanted to point that out. So I came to Ikebana. I just retired 2 years ago, basically from Raytheon as an engineer. And so my hobby has always been gardening. Been gardening for about 38 years in the current location where we live. So, and I've been a member of Native Plant Society and very interested in native plants because we do live on a marshy type of area. So it's backs up to like a preserve and it goes out to Tampa Bay. So it's brackish in the winter and it's pretty much completely fresh in the summer. So we actually have kind of all the three types of ecosystems there, which is pretty fun actually. So one of my main goals was I'm taking the Florida Master Naturalist program to understand the high level ecosystems rather than just learning about plants and gardening. So I'm really excited about that. That was one of my top priorities, that and Ikebana. Kind of the big picture view and then the specific, what do I do with the stuff I'm growing kind of view. So both of those. So we have a borrowed view. We can see the marsh and things. And I've been very interested in garden design for years. And it's mostly inspired by Japanese garden design and more naturalistic. But also, of course, every time we go traveling, like there's kind of a French part and a British part. Anyway, and inspired by various things because every time we come home, I have to redo stuff. So we don't have, we got rid of the lawn after, I think the first year they insisted on putting it in. So there's about 75% native plants. It's always been organic and I had to get the certifications to keep the homeowners association kind of at bay. We had some annoying neighbors, but our homeowners association's actually been very good about it and generally supportive. So, and now it's not really an issue. So the garden is a multi-purpose. So, and I have priorities, of course, and this is kind of where that comes into play. The top priority is food for pollinators and wildlife. And then food for us, although I've largely outsourced the food for us part to Life Farms now because I'm not really good at growing vegetables. We don't have a lot of sun. So I'm kind of mainly focused on herbs. And then also garden design, I'm really into that. So, and then Ikebana is like the fourth priority. So that means that basically if something's there and it's food for anything or us, or it looks good, I don't cut it. So that kind of limits my options. So as an example, these flowers came from Folly Farm. So I'm in the Safety Harbor Garden Club and I do volunteer some at Folly Farm. So they were gracious enough to let me for this occasion cut some flowers from there because I had nothing blooming except a few little asters. And we do have a lot of wildlife. We have otters, and then we have we even have a gator recently farther down the creek, which is kind of unusual. But we have all kinds of raccoons, possums, coyotes, marsh rabbits are my particular frenemies. They come out and eat everything. So they're actually worse than the armadillos. At least I can replant the thing after they're done, but with the marsh rabbits, you really can't do that. So anyway, I really enjoy it. So Ikebana and gardening, to me, it's a perfect thing because I'm terrible in the kitchen. So making jelly, I did do that during COVID, everybody did, right? So, and it was frightening. So I decided I'd do Ikebana instead. So I really like that. And I feel like practicing the art makes the other better because really if you think about like a painting of a garden or something is like two-dimensional. Ikebana is three-dimensional. And in fact, especially for the school I'm in, depth is very important. So that's why you see, even though it's viewed from the front, and those last two arrangements down there are mine, they have things sticking out the back. That's to show depth. So that is important. So it's three-dimensional. The thing that's missing, although there is some focus and understanding of the seasons, and there are some changes, like if you had a type of a Moribana arrangement, like in the flatter containers, then you would have your water visible in the front in the summer, and then to help with the cool feeling. And then you put it more to the back in the winter. And like branches like I have generally, although I love oak branches with lichen the most of anything. So I use them any time of year, but they're more of a focus in the winter, especially the bare branches like that. So they do have a focus on the seasons, but time is not really an element. So it's very similar to like a show garden, like you would see at Chelsea. You know, they come in, they install it, it looks good for the week or 2 weeks. Ikebana generally doesn't last that long. It's usually like 3 or 4 days, but still that's your time limit. So you really don't, you know, that's good because it doesn't junk up your house. You just toss it out. It's gone after 3 days. So you don't need a lot of space, which is really nice. And by the time you get tired of it, it's pretty much done. But it is, you know, gardening is so much more challenging, assuming you don't rip out everything every 3 months, but it's, you know, it's different from that perspective. But really, I think Ikebana is more like, with the new American gardening, more of the vignette part, you know, and that's what's really helped me is I've kind of learned how to do Ikebana and then kind of take those principles to small focus areas in my garden and, you know, and make those vignettes. And that's really helped me personally. Ikebana follows the rules. So like that one on the end is kind of similar to it's freestyle, but it's similar to an upright form with the oak branches, in that there's generally always 3 branches or big leaves, and then 3, generally in my school, large flowers. And what you do is at the placement, like for that one, that's upright form. So the tallest one's in the back, but it's still leaning slightly forward. And then you have angles of about 60 degrees on the second one, and then, you know, about 45 degrees on the third one. And they're shorter, you know, they come down in length. So the upright one's the tallest, and then the second one's a third smaller from that, you know, and then down for the third one. So it's all kind of, and there's particular rules depending on which form you use. So that's actually been helpful too. So there's focus for Ikebana, and it's kind of like, where do you start? And that depends on the circumstance. So the focus is either the environment you're going to put the Ikebana in. Is it you know, is it for like a buffet or a table setting, or is it outside? Is it really supposed to be big? Is it like in your front yard? Is Christmas decor? You know, what is it? And so that's the location. And then of course there are the plant materials, the flowers, and the leaves and branches. And so you can start from there as well. And you have to consider all these 3 things. And then of course, containers. And Ikebana is an excuse for 2 things. It's an excuse to buy a lot of cool pottery that you like anyway. Oh, I need this for Ikebana. And then it's an excuse to buy a bunch of plants, which I'll get into that later, is one of my kind of mitigations if you don't have anything that's blooming. You just go to Wilcox Nursery or somewhere, buy something that's blooming, cut off the bloom, use it for Ikebana, and then plant the rest in your yard. So that really helps too. So I'm very focused primarily just because I'm a gardener on plant materials. So I generally always start with the plant materials. We have lessons, of course, that are specific, and we know what we have to do for a lesson when we're doing lessons. So I always then try, you know, it has to fit that. So like the far one on the end is a diagonal rectangular type of thing. So that's just an example. The school I'm in, one of the reasons I picked it is because it uses a lot of bamboo, and I really love making things out of bamboo. I have bamboo in my yard, the clumping type, not the running type. I use it for fencing. I use it for everything, but you can see here, I made this little kind of fence thing out of it. So that's pretty fun. So if you don't have a garden, there's many ways you can think outside the box. And, you know, a lot of folks that are in our Ikebana chapter live in condos or whatever, and they have strict limitations about what they can do. So a lot of people go to florists and, you know, buy stuff, but there are some, you know, and that's fine. Even, you know, like Publix or Trader Joe's or any of those places, Fresh Market, have decent cut flowers in addition to all the local florists. But really, if you don't want it, you know, flowing from South America and pesticided to death and all that, then, you know, some of it is. So you can consider like Life Farms has really good, you know, flowers that they sell every week. And I get their sunflowers a lot, mostly. And then farmers markets also. So you may as well buy, you know, local when you can. And then you can buy entire plants. So I, part of the Safety Harbor Garden Club, but they have great events on the second Saturday every month. They have a huge plant sale and all the plants are $5 or $10. So you can go buy those and then cut it off and donate it to, you know, a friend of yours who's a gardener, you know, like me or whatever, any of you. And then that's a really good way to do it. So what do we think about with regard to Ikebana? So you have to think of a lot of things, and I already went over a lot of this, inside or outside. And guests, you know, it's always a big deal to do Ikebana for guests, but then do I want to cut it for my garden if my guests are gardeners? That's one answer versus like if it's, you know, like my mother can't really walk around the garden anymore, so I always do really nice inside Ikebana, you know, when she's here. Or does it need to be deadheaded or pruned or removed anyway? Like when we took out our hedge, I used a ligustrum for every Ikebana lesson for, you know, several months, and my instructor was heartily sick of it. And then the quantity of materials, like how much do you really need for an exhibition or really large arrangements. The school I'm in, sometimes they do like really huge arrangements, and that's really nice. But we have a tiny house, so, you know, for myself, I don't do that. And you can do, you know, like she's illustrated here, some really small arrangements, which are cool. And then the stage of life of the materials and how long the arrangement has to last. I was really excited to have that oak, that piece of oak with the leaves on that. That branch got ripped off in whatever the last hurricane that didn't actually hit us was. So that was really cool. Usually I just don't cut stuff from trees. So much falls off, there's really no need. So I love trees. That gets into the tree thing, which tree branches to use. Oak, pine, and maple. Pine is very popular Japanese. You know, they use pine a lot. So that's pretty exciting, and the fungi and lichen and everything that's on the oak branches is pretty good too. And then they call it driftwood. So I was a little concerned about that. Like, does it have to be washed up on a beach in Hawaii? No, it can be, they call mountain wood is wood that hasn't been in the water and just falls off your tree. So that's pretty cool. And then branches with leaves, palms and palmettos, and then shorter needle type pines. Like I did buy a sand pine that I'm going to use also for Ikebana when I prune it. So I was really excited about that. And magnolia, I use a lot of magnolia. I was actually going to do that today, but couldn't get the other colors right. So especially around the holidays, magnolia is just awesome. And then you can see some examples here of the various branches. That's an old Virginia creeper branch up there with the orange orchids, and so that was pretty cool. And then the others, there's maple right below it with the pink, those maple branches, and of course the other ones are branches. So native vines, that's kind of my favorite. I think vines provide bling, you know, so usually I like to do arrangements. I have a lot of vines. Interestingly, our Smilex is really, there's Nimolex, is really Japanese, called greenbrier. It's what it's called in Japanese, and it's really revered there. And so it's kind of cool, you know, when you have it, you can't buy it anywhere. So I love to just, you know, kind of show off and bring some to the workshops and exhibitions and things. Passion vine is really good. It lasts really long also. And then the others, there's a lot of other vines as well that you can use. So here's your some arrangements with different vines. So then for native shrubs, palmettos are the most useful. I think palmettos are just amazing in that you can cut them in different shapes. They last a really long time. And in the one in the black boat here, you can see there's an inflorescence of a palmetto that I painted red. And the palmetto is just so versatile. And here's the inflorescence that's used again in the one with 3. And then wild coffee also is wonderful, since the stopper. And this time I used berries from the Folly Farm firebush. So, because my firebush didn't have berries at this point. So that's a really good one too. And flowers. This is the biggest problem we have, is that the school I'm in Ikebana generally requires large flowers. And we just don't have that many large native flowers. So, we have to either have some tropical things or use it. Native plants can be used as filler. So I try to use Florida-friendly plants where possible in there. But like that's a clerodendron and azaleas, groups of plants can sit in for one plant. My magnolia has never bloomed, so that's a disappointment. But anyway, but fillers, native plants are great for fillers. So you usually have the big flowers and you have fillers kind of around. So what's next? Grasses, I've been really excited about grasses. I've been using a lot of them and planting a lot of them in my yard. So I'm really happy about that. Elias love grass, although that's a purple top tridescens there. And I had another grass, but I don't think I used it. And then as I have a sunny garden now because I lost an old maple tree. So I'm going to have more flowers to harvest. I'm going to be able to grow more flowers, I think more wildflowers. And really learning from people and collaborating. And I've learned so much from Sue. She has an awesome garden. And so that's been very helpful, the sunny garden. And we all give each other plants and stuff. Most of the people in Ikebana are gardeners as well. So we have some poster boards here with pictures of our own gardens. So and plants that we particularly like. So I invite you to look at those. And then also in the back, we have cards from our Ikebana chapter. And if you just scan those cards or take a picture of them, you can look at the QR code and it'll take you to the chapter webpage and things like that, if you might be interested in that. So it's always learning and experimenting. So recommendations, I think gardeners who have, any spare time, not that anyone does, but if you should happen to, and want to do something art garden related, you should consider learning Ikebana. It's very useful. Plus it gives you something to bring to parties if you can't cook. So there's a lot of advantages, and practicing both gardening and Ikebana, I think are kind of mutually reinforcing. So we have St. Petersburg Ikebana chapter 65 webpage and Facebook. They do meet once a month, but then each schools, they encourage you to take lessons. I didn't really know what I was getting into when I started. I thought I'd just go to a few meetings and watch other people do stuff. But then they encourage you to take lessons, and that's a really great experience. You really have a master, or we call them sensei, teacher, teach you and correct you, and teach you the rules and their books and things. And so it's not intimidating. It's not like you have to be an artist, because I certainly am not an artist, but just having the rules is really helpful. So you can create too. And thank you very much, for inviting us today. And Sue, and my Ikebana sensei in Ichio is Jean Holton, and she's an excellent artist. She's amazing. And most of the photos were taken by Jean. Thank you. And now Sue.
Okay, I was first introduced to Ikebana through sumi-e, ink painting on mulberry paper, sometimes incorporating watercolors. It was Hiroko, the teacher of my sumi-e class, that introduced me to Ikebana. I've always loved painting and gardening, so I was drawn to these two Japanese arts. I've lived in my home for 37 years, and the first plant I started was Aspidistra. We're in Shofu School, Ikebana, 24 years ago. I eventually planted pandanus as well. I joined the FNPS, Coordinated Plant Society, in 2011, a few years after I retired from medical technology and began tearing out turf grass and weeds and planting natives. It's interesting to watch plants come, bloom, and go with the seasons and come up somewhere else in my yard the next year. These are just some different plants in my yard, some non-native pandanus, aspidistra, railroad vine is native, muley grass. There's something interesting about this muley grass. It was really in high color, you know, how purple it gets and it blows in the wind and looks beautiful. And I wanted to see if it would keep the color if I cut it underwater. And this is a preservative that we use sometimes. It's called Quick Dip. And so I dipped it in that and then stuck it back in water. And that was at least a month ago. And it's still purple. And all the muley grass in my yard is faded out to tan and really light color. So I was really pleased. I wish I'd cut more. I'm going to do that next year. Silver buttonwood, yellow top I've used in the basket arrangement. My bee balm is mostly gone, the blazing star. Pineland heliotrope I've used quite a bit in these arrangements. I was determined that I was going to get everything that I used in these arrangements out of my yard. So I've cut a lot of material and worked with it and ended up throwing it in the trash. These are the ones that survived. This is a cassia or a senna. And I was disappointed that a lot of the blooms were gone, but it had all these beautiful seed pods. So I used that in this arrangement. And the Pineland, the seaside lavender is used to cover up the Kenzon. This is a basket that I made with directions from an FNPS magazine. The guy at some of the conventions would show us, he'd have workshops and show us how to make these baskets. This is rice button aster. And again, seaside lavender. And this is equisetum and cranberry hibiscus and seaside lavender. So I'd like to thank the FNPS for inviting us to do this program today, and Suzanne Hassell, my partner in crime. And it's provided me with an opportunity to share many of the, oh, wait, I have, can you hear that? Yeah. Those bees are wonderful. How do I activate the other movie? Oh, okay. I get carried away with pictures in my yard. And the gaillardia is already blooming again. These are some more Ikebana arrangements. The one on the left is one that I did at Sunken Gardens using palm spats and cabbage palm leaves. You can braid into these shapes, and I did a bunch of those. I'm going to bring it over there. You see that? So I made a Christmas tree out of this one. So thank you for inviting us. I've reviewed many of my pictures, which I hadn't seen for years. And I have Suzanne to thank for introducing me to a new tool, Keynote, otherwise known as PowerPoint. And I'd also like to thank my excellent and patient O'Hara teacher, Susan Thorpe. The end. Questions? Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Do we have any questions? I do want to make notes, the two arrangements at the end, I will do my best to move the whole system over so we can get a peek at those. Everyone online, I don't think got a chance to. Did anyone here have any questions for our presenters? Anyone? Ms. Jan?
Could each of you just explain briefly like what the basic rules are of your preferred school? And also the second question is, do you always create the same school or do you ever try other schools?
Try other schools. But we're encouraged to stay in the same school
If you want that.
once we've tried the different schools and decided which one we like the best. We're encouraged to stay in that school and learn more, because you can spend years learning O'Hara, for instance. And these are just basic arrangements, and they're called rising forms. This is a freestyle.
I'm in the Ichigo school, and it's considered a more modern school, I guess. So it has, well, as example, the painted inflorescences of the palmetto that were painted red. That's kind of an example of what we can do there as well. And you can see there's the sort of the sleek black base and things like that. So it's a little bit different from that perspective, and there is a focus on bamboo as well. That's one thing, and building things in balance. Balance is really key. So like these things can tip over very easily. So having balance in your arrangement is really important, and sometimes it can get too risky. I mean, especially during an exhibition when little kids come along and they like tug on it and it collapses and smashes. That's not really good, but generally, I mean, that's kind of it, and it's a performance, almost a performance art. So they expect you to do demonstrations, which we really didn't do today because we had to get set up and bring in, we set up the arrangements ahead of time, but generally you would do the arrangements and show how they're done and talk through it. So it's almost like a performance art. So that's different than going off and doing it for yourself, which I enjoy personally, just doing it for myself or my guests or whatever. And then having it there, I don't feel as comfortable doing demonstrations in front of people. Pseudos, for example.
Have you scheduled your spring exhibition? And if so, can you tell us when it would be?
Yes,
That'd be a great time
it's
for people to see
yeah.
demonstrations.
that it is. It's really awesome. It's in Treasure Island again, and it's January, like,
January 21st.
yay.
Part.
Yeah.
And I have this on a computer. I'll send it to you. Send it to everyone.
We got away from the spring break crowd, which was kind of a nightmare being on Treasure Island on the beach. So, so we moved it to January, which I think will be easier. But that's great because all the schools, everybody, we each do 2 arrangements, everybody in all the schools. There's usually about 70 arrangements or something like that. So, and they raffle off baskets and stuff, and they also sell arrangements as well. So that's cool.
How do you go about picking a school? I mean, is there a list of the different schools? and what they do?
We have workshops after many of the meetings in the different schools. And so the new people, when they come in, they have no idea what they want to do. So they're invited to watch the workshops in the different schools until they decide.
So in the meeting, you have multiple schools.
Oh, you do, yeah, in the chapter meetings. And I took a lesson from each school. I took an individual, they let me take individual lessons from each school just to kind of figure out, which one you want.
Like safety chapter has different schools. About 5 schools. So Getsu, Ichio, Manisha. There's another, Inobo has a teacher too. Las Vegas, some of the younger people. So they give private lessons, but also they're trying to set up lessons for new people that come in. Even before they join, they can take a lesson.
And there were some lessons that were being taught at the Largo Library, I guess. I know Eugenia was going to do that. So occasionally there are some out in the community. And I think before I joined, like your example, the demonstration in Sunken Gardens, I joined during COVID when everything was going to shut down, but you guys used to do that a lot, right?
A lot of YouTube videos too.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, not really a question. I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but do you mind going over those last 2?
Oh, right, sure. Yeah, I realized when she was talking about it that I didn't do it. So, yes, so this is sort of an upright form. So these are oak branches with lichen, and then there are things called those are the main stems, the 3 main stems. And the form is, you measure like the size of the container to figure out how tall your first one needs to be. So it's that. And then the assistant stems are this gray tea bush. And I got that from Folly. And as well as this is obedient plant is the main flower. So I'm supposed to have like 3 big flowers, but there really weren't any. It's a rough time of year. So I have 2 big flowers, and then the mist Argyridium Florida native one too is, kind of a cluster there as well. So that's what's in that one. And then this one is another oak branch, miraculously with the leaves still on after it was ripped off from Nicole, the hurricane thing, I mean. And then, of course, a palmetto there. And so this form is diagonal, so it slants this way, and it's kind of rectangular, looking at it from the front. There's always a viewpoint. So these, looks like all of them are more or less viewed from the front, but you can have many views if it's in, if you're approaching it, if it's in a round table and you walk around it, then it has to be viewed from all sides. A centerpiece has to be viewed from all sides on the table and has to be short, you know, like up to your elbow. So there's all kinds of, depending on where, you know, where you'd view that, you know, if it's in an entryway, then I have a lot of 3-view things because I have special Ikebana spots. And so you come in the door, you go on one side of it, then you walk past the front, and then you go down the hall past the other side. So I have a lot of 3-view things I have to do at home. So that's just examples of what you would do there. So this is a in the fire bush from Folly Farm, as well as the shrimp plant is also from Folly Farm, and then purple tridescens. I never know how to pronounce that one, but except it's not really purple anymore. But I didn't do what Sue did, so that's what's there. I brought some coffee. I was going to use coffee, but I thought that actually looked better, so I didn't.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? I did not see any questions in the chat. About 12 minutes. Well, thank you guys so much for the presentation. Please, round of applause. All right. I will get to, if you guys want to stick around, I will also get to the poster boards behind me. I did, now that our meeting is concluded, and I wanted to take a minute to thank all of our 2022 board. Thank you guys for all of your extremely hard work, your dedication to FNPS, and to all of its members. Another thank you to all of our members. Thank you guys for being a part of our organization. Thank you for your donations. And thank you guys for being interested in what I think is one of the coolest things in the world, which is native plants. Totally not cheesy, right? And a thank you to all of our presenters, field trip guides, other organizations that have partnered with us over this last year. A big thank you to all of them. So if you guys on Zoom want to stick around, I'm going to put us on mute and I will show off some of the poster boards. But if not, thank you guys for joining and I hope you have a wonderful night.